Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. Hold, Jordan, can you lower the music? Jesus Christ.
It's such a
I'm like, because I don't even know, like, am I talking to people? Am I talking to myself? Okay, thank you. Where there, where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
And I'm LouiLou. My pronouns are he and him. I'm recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversations centered around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Yes, but before we do that, please like, share, comment, and rate this episode.
Rate this episode. And now the disclaimer. The thoughts and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you. And of course, everything we say is for general information purposes only.
Absolutely. And all that jabbering you did before was great because it ended right perfectly, because normally we have...
Yeah, I know. That's what it was, like, loud. It was
music, like, we have the instrumental so we can collect tips.
Yeah, Jordan, you're doing great. You're doing great, Jordan.
Thank you.
So Jordan's behind the camera today, and he's producing today's show. Louis, how are you?
I am good. This has been an interesting week because it's like I go through this. It might be the tail end of Virgo, whatever, but I've been kind of like feeling stuff and moody and whatever. And so, I have this process where, if I'm feeling it, I talk about it and I address it. And I've just been actively trying not to, like, I haven't been doing that thing where I call my isolation solitude.
Oh, yeah. You mean like where you like cut everyone out?
Yeah. Well, because I remember the feelings I had. I remember, going through, depression and what have you, and not wanting to go back. So I'm taking all the necessary steps. So I'm good. I'm good today. How are you?
Oh, today has been a fucking day. So you know how I don't have a car, so I'm using a car subscription service.
What does that mean?
So basically, I'm sorry, Jordan, you have something to say? You have something to say? Jordan, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Jordan's laughing.
No, keep going.
All right, let me in on the joke. So I use this car subscription service. The long and the short of it is that I have to reserve a car before I use it, right? Okay. And I pay a monthly subscription fee. So today I walk up to the parking lot, I get to the car, I never fucking reserved the car. Oh. So I'm like, oh my God, well, this is okay because I always give myself 30 extra minutes. And so I'm patting myself on the back. So finally, I contact the guy. He's like, well, there's another car, but it's over here. So I go to the other car. I had to get an Uber. I paid $25 fucking for an Uber. I go to get this other car. Then the numbers on the car don't match. Oh. So now I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get? So then I get in this car. Finally, I get to work. Then I had an intake, and then I had to do all this stuff. And then I had to go to another hospital. I'd do all that stuff. Then I had to come back to my hospital to wrap up a note. And then I have to go from there to come over here. And then there was traffic. I was just so much. Oh my God. And then I almost didn't show up to here on time. I literally, for people listening, I got here 5 minutes ago.
Wow.
I am so...
I guess, you know what? Everything I've been going through this last week is nothing.
It's been a lot. But we have a guest here today.
We do.
He's an old friend of mine named David. David, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing very well.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. So we have David on. So for folks listening, you know that this month has been the month of controversial topics. We've talked about politics. We've talked about, what else have we talked about? Race.
Mainly race and politics. I think we kind of jumbled it all together and just whatever popped up.
Yeah. So I want to give a quick introduction of David. So David is a certified diversity, equity, and inclusion program manager. He's worked across, he has a decade of experience in shaping and implementing DEI strategies across corporate settings. A core focus of his work has been aligning organizations' talent acquisition and management strategies with its overall business objectives with a DEI lens.
I love it. He's nodding. It's like,
yeah.
You're getting it right.
I know. It's like I'm reading his LinkedIn. He's especially when you get to these adjectives. When you get to these adjectives, right. He is adept at understanding the company's goals, identifying the skills and capabilities needed to achieve these goals, analyzing, operationalizing data design, build and scale innovative strategies and programs to attract, retain, and develop the right talent. In other words, what were we going to say, David?
Oh, nothing. That was you went right. You went wrong.
So I invited David, one, because he's an old friend of mine, and I knew that he was in DEI work. But one of the things that I really appreciated about David when we met in undergrad was that race and identity politics and intersectionalities were all things that were very important to him. Mm-hmm. And so, he's then since taken that and he's made a profession of it.
Most definitely, yeah. I mean, I remember back in college, Anthony having a conversation where he's like, "Girl, why do you like being conquered all the time?" It was just my dating preferences. And I was like, "I'm in it for the good credit."
What are you talking? Okay,
but no. This is perfect. But we knew that we were going to get along well. It was blended there. But yes, and then applying just social consciousness grew from there, and now I'm making some coin off it. Well,
whatever you're doing what you got to do. You're doing what you got to.
Exactly.
So David, let's start off with defining what DEI is. So what is DEI? So we in diversity, equity, and inclusion. But as someone with your level of experience and expertise, what does it mean?
Yeah, so diversity, equity, inclusion. So this is really, it's a cultural practice, it's a practice in business. And so what this says here is diversity is embracing, acknowledging all the differences that make us all unique. So, looking at race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Equity is more about looking at the business practices, making sure that everyone, in terms of making sure everyone has what they need to succeed and thrive within that organization. And so identifying those barriers that exist and then systematically, strategically removing them so everyone has a fair chance. And then inclusion is making sure people feel like they are respected, like they belong, and they're welcome to be there, right. and they can thrive there. So it's more action oriented.
That's really cool. Thank you for that definition. Mm-hmm. Because you've worked in San Francisco, right?
What was that?
You've worked in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah,
so the follow up to that. Hold on one second. So for folks who are watching, you're probably listening. I'm waving my hand all over the place and in front of David because there's a fucking bug in this room, and I'm trying to keep it away from David.
Thank you so much.
This is probably the only thing I'm going to say this whole hour, but this is exciting.
That's not true.
I am on the edge of my seat. This is I'm really enjoying this conversation so far. I really appreciate this.
Thank you, David. I mean, Louis. So
San Francisco, yes.
Yeah, San Francisco, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason why I bring that up, and we talked about this briefly yesterday, is because it's tech heavy, right? So I'm wondering what has been the reception of tech and with respect to your experience. Have they been very receptive to DEI stuff? You also mentioned something really interesting. It's a two-part question. Okay. You also mentioned something really interesting. Well, one of the interesting things that you mentioned.
He's all yes and.
Don't interrupt me. What you mentioned was that that people are cutting budgets, and so DEI programs are I guess essentially being cut out. So
yeah, so for sure. So let me kind of approach it from the lens of where I started from before I got into DEI work, explicitly within tech. Yeah. So I got my master's in clinical psychology. So I was doing therapy work for disenfranchised communities, really trying to help them find their sense of self so they can thrive in the lives that they lived. Mm-hmm. Now San Francisco being this tech hub, definitely saw an opportunity to apply my skills to start changing the system from the inside out while making some money, because mental health work, as important as it is, it also is really, for me, was a struggle to really make ends meet, paycheck to paycheck, everything else. Mm-hmm. And so, the tech companies were willing to, hire folks within the DEI realm. I got certified, got a job in there, and been there ever since. Now, that being said, we're San Francisco is a special place where a lot of radicalism, a lot of, just be who. Can I cuss on here? I don't know.
Yeah. We're rated E for explicit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just being whoever the fuck you want to be can be embraced in some way, shape, or form, or what have you, right? And so initially, DEI was, and most often or not, it is still being embraced. It's still being acknowledged. It's something that is there. However, with that being said, there definitely is a trend right now that, as within the next couple of years for sure, where budgets are being cut. So in terms of for San Francisco, I'm finding roles are actually harder to come by. I am someone right now actually who is currently who's unemployed and looking for work, and the struggle is real.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please do.
Can we kind of talk about this a little beforehand? Mm-hmm. Does the narrative or the conversation at the national level have anything to do with maybe why some of these programs are being cut?
Ooh. Oh yeah, no, it's a great question. No, for sure. Just thinking about today in today's life right now, every day, right? We have like Kamala Harris being called a DEI hire.
Yeah.
We have there's a Supreme Court actions around affirmative action happening. So all this definitely is impacting business practices where folks some business leaders are withdrawing budgets. They're scared to take a stance on certain topics, right? And so all of that is definitely playing a part in it. But it's really with the companies that are really fighting through and really want to embed it in their DNA. They're the ones that are going to have that competitive advantage. They're the ones that are really going to stand out here. And so definitely political things, social things are all impacting this work for sure.
I really appreciated what you said about it is the companies that embrace diversity that do the best, right? And that's well documented.
Yeah.
Companies that embrace diversity. And I also like the way you outlined this earlier by mentioning like, you're talking about gender and sexual orientation and so many different things. Generally, we think about like race and we forget about like socioeconomic status and
Absolutely.
we forget about gender and abilities, right? Like people who are disabled. And I knew I had a good point to get to.
I was getting somewhere.
Okay,
I heard somebody in a debate.
And then I
in a
went
debate
somewhere.
when they were debating someone who had an issue with the idea of DEI. They challenged him and said the Electoral College is DEI at its best.
See.
Okay, I remember what I was going to say. So it's well documented that companies that embrace all types of diversity tend to be they are more creative, they make more money, they have stronger workforces, they have many different perspectives that contribute to decision making, and they in turn bottom line is they make the most revenue, they tend to have the most kind of like innovative programs, et cetera.
100%. Yeah. If you're looking for like brand loyalty, right? Are you gonna go with the company A that has now pulled out of, they pulled resources from their groups where they're like, no longer, you just look on a team, you don't see anyone who looks like you there. They're not really engaged in the communities in which they actually try to do business with. So it's really disconnected, right? It's really, they don't really understand what's happening, how they can better serve the communities. How can a company show up for the communities that you belong to and that you identify with and want to do business with, and outside of just throwing your product at them, which some companies do try to do. Another thing you can do is really just like show up for them authentically. How are you volunteering? How are you giving back? And I think that is what kind of resonates right now with a lot of folks is, what are you going to do for me besides just trying to, see me as a number or like see me as a consumer just for your product, whatnot, without really understanding are the needs of the people and the needs of how
Or like
can
with
really
Jordan, seeing him as a wet hole.
What are you talking about? How does that increase anyone's bottom line?
Okay, so I'm going to ask a real question.
Yeah.
So knowing that CC is about recovery, right, and this is more recovery focused, for somebody who is looking to look for a job, right, how beneficial or hindrance is it to say I'm in recovery when applying for a job or speaking openly about work, things like that, to say,
Interesting.
I think, well, that is a great question. I think in terms of, like your own, like the own individual's personal like safety with that disclosure is really understanding the culture of the company. So I would probably I would suggest maybe do some research first, doing some homework into how the company, what are their values, what's their mission like, how are they, what programs do they currently have? Maybe reach out to someone who works there, just to have an informational conversation to kind of just see, do they feel supported and what needs that they have. Because it is a vulnerable situation to put yourself out there and then to not get the job because of that, then that is a discriminatory practice as well, because that is not a hindrance on how you're going to perform in the job in of itself, right? And so one thing, just approach with caution, do some research behind that, see what, and then you can even ask them as well, because you're also interviewing the company too, right? And so you want to ask them, what programs do you provide for folks when, what are some of the benefits and things you have available to folks who might be going through a stressful time in their life that might need, mental health work. And so so just really drilled in on that. And then if you feel safe to disclose that, then you can say, because of this reason. I'd probably approach it with that lens.
Yeah, I love that. So what I was going to say. What's interesting about this is because Jordan's question reminds me of like conversations that we've had about disclosure before. Yeah. And one of the places we've landed with that is like you disclose whether it's your HIV status, whether it's your like ability or like illness or whatever it is that you disclose when you stand to benefit from the disclosure because you owe no one anything. So, and the other thing I was thinking about though is that when does I imagine that if someone were to discuss, I don't know, Jordan, I just don't know that it's like a smart idea to like in an interview be like, and by the way, I'm an alcoholic. I don't know.
I had
without giving it context.
Yeah, you know,
I
actually,
definitely want to.
Yeah.
Right.
in my active addiction, I think the key is active addiction. I interviewed with this one company and I was super excited. At first I didn't want it, but I showed up and somehow I ended up talking about my mental stuff. It was like, if I could look back now and I realized, oh yeah, I'm not getting this job.
I mean, the interview is not the therapy session.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. You're like, I have a nervous tick. They're like, we haven't started the interview.
But I think it goes into this idea of diversity, right? To say that I have experience in this whole other realm, this whole other world that most other people don't, as known as 12-step, right? I've lived and experienced, and I live in a different way of life that I hadn't before, right? So I think that to me, it could be an asset to say, hey, I'm part of this 12-step community, and I abide by these principles, right? Whatever they may be. And I think that could be, in my ideal mind, right? Diversity higher in and of itself.
I feel like you should tread lightly on that because
I also feel like you shouldn't lie.
You don't want to become the person.
Well, right. Also, too, I mean, you got to think of it like this. Like a lot of hiring managers or HR folks, right? They want to protect the company. The company is they want to make sure they're not getting into any hot water with anything. They don't want to, so you see a lot of folks who when things, someone had done something racist, someone did something like wild, acting out, whatever. Like they especially now, right, in the way that our social political climate is, like the people are getting shut, they're getting fired, they're getting canceled, whatever it may be, right? So I would definitely suggest ease on the side of caution with certain disclosures of that nature. However, again, like I said, you can ask about in roundabout ways first, and then once you get that foot in the door, once you're there, then you start to explore and kind of see what what options exist there. Just because it just can send off some flags, which is also like. Not necessarily.
Yeah, I get that.
Justin doesn't look satisfied with
his name's Jordan.
I know. Sorry, Justin.
But part of what I love that you're bringing up here is that you're talking about neurodiversity, right? Like, and also like a person's ability is a protected class, right? Like if we're talking about the legalities of it.
Well, that's true,
but that's the thing is that it's easier to shut the door on someine at the onset. Than it is further in, right? Like if you're already employed and you disclose and you like lose your job, then that's a what, Title IX, I think.
In the research that you do leading up to, I feel like you can get a feel of where the company might be based on what they prioritize.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, can I tell you something? And David, I'm curious about what your opinion is on this. So, like to your question, Jordan, what is your problem?
That you were late.
Thank you. It's like
I was late. I was coming all the way from Antioch.
And I love.
So one of the things so right now I'm applying for postdocs, and I work in addiction medicine and LGBT, and I have a history. I've historically worked with LGBT populations. Okay, so I've been thinking a lot about including that, like I'm a man of color, and I don't know why I said it that way, but I'm a man of color, and I'm in recovery, and I'm gay.
The blacks.
Yeah, I'm basically like I'm gay, I'm brown, I'm drunk. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, that's, it's empowering. I think it is relevant to the postdoc. Oh. But there's another part of me that's like, based on like the conversation we just had, which is like, oh, is that a smart idea?
I mean, I'm not, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was saying because I'm not necessarily in that space to like approve or like have experience having
I see what
you
you're
know
saying.
what I mean? Like I kind of sort of speak to like what information would be most pertinent to help you, get through and whatnot. I mean, for me, it always goes back to, like you mentioned, protected classes, right? So if we're talking about all those things that you can't say that because they can't really deny you necessarily for that, right? So in my mind, it's like, don't give them a reason, And so if what you're writing to or what you're trying to talk about is things you've overcome, then that sounds appropriate, right? Yeah. Or like how that has informed who you are and like how you operate, then maybe, definitely you might want to talk about that. But like, for me, I just come from like a corporate lens of things. That's something you probably wouldn't want to disclose again at the onset. Because it's one thing to talk about. You mentioned neurodiversity a moment ago. If we're talking about, they want to like tell me about yourself, or some kind of question like that comes through.
I'm an alcoholic.
When you want, and you mentioned this story of of a neurodiverse situation, and which is our experience that you've had and whatnot. That's okay to like say in that sense because they can't necessarily let you go, because if they did, then there's a backlash around that, where it's be like they let me go because I'm of this community here. That puts them in hot water, right? Yeah. But saying 12-step alcoholic, that's more, that's not necessarily a protected class, so that's a different, there's a different set of like risks to be taken with that.
It would seem as though before you're in, they don't really have any kind of loyalty, and because like there's no guarantee with 12-step or any kind of recovery. And like you said, it's like their responsibility is to kind of protect the company. Yeah.
But could you argue, so there is some background, I'm a social worker, and so there's a lot of research around that addiction is now a disease, right? Mm-hmm. So wouldn't that fall under a protected class now that it's
always, I mean, David's also not an attorney.
It's always been kind of classified as a disease, but even if folks haven't been like looking at it that way. Isn't that correct?
Well, also I think with as a disease, but it's not a protected class in that sense. I think because like when you're thinking of like protected class, those are like what do you call it? Unchangeable characteristics of oneself, right? Like you are female, you are male.
Just lean on the homosexual.
You are like sexual orientation, all those types of things. And I mean,
So like autism wouldn't fall under that?
No, autism does as a neurodiversity. Like autism does fall as a protected class for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking over your notes here. Can you tell us a little bit about this, where you talk about impact of DEI backlash?
Oh, my notes. Yeah. Just
I mean, you don't have to read them. Just tell us.
Yeah. So like
this isn't audible.
No. So like just when we talked about earlier, some of the how pulling funds and stuff like that were happening. A lot of that really has stemmed from like as the pushback from the far right or just billionaires, people with money have influence, and they're putting things out there saying like DEI is wrong and illegal in of itself. So we have billionaires like Elon Musk and folks, current president candidate Donald Trump, like saying that these things are actually wrong for business and bad for business, and so that's it has influence, it has sway, it had those things like that. It creates a narrative or it fuels a narrative that does already kind of exist, that underpins the work itself, within U.S. American culture here. Yeah. And so companies then, not say that was the cause that made companies want to pull back, but it does kind of, it gave allowance to, right?
Yeah.
It kind
exactly.
of reaffirmed that like you don't necessarily need to necessarily do that. And so that's kind of what
I feel that. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Did you have a thing, Louis?
No. I'm just nodding, agreeing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, because I had a follow-up thing.
Follow-up?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't talking over you.
No. So like that would stop you.
Yeah.
He talks over me. You know what? Hey, shut up, black man. And I'm all, wah, wah, wah.
I have never, for the record.
Can you play that tape back, please?
Okay. All right.
Where's HR?
She got receipts.
I know.
No, she doesn't have receipts.
I know. Let's roll that beautiful bean footage.
What?
Just on top, just real quick on that note there. So like as a lot of companies and within DEI work itself too, a lot of it, as they're pulling funding and resources towards it, a lot of it also becomes very face value and self-serving, where a lot of it becomes like very episodic programming. Oh, let's put on this.
Let's have a workshop.
Let's put on, seriously. Let's have a workshop. Companies want these like one-off situations where the work is not necessarily tied to something larger for the company. Mm-hmm. That's with the face value. That's the self-serving moments that happen.
I saw you the DEI versus the affirmative action there, and it sounds like what kind of happened with affirmative action, where folks were afraid of being penalized, and so they were.
Right. Yeah.
They're so performing like, we're going to do this, and this way, when you come and check us,
basically, they want to check the box and whatnot. And so it's like, oh, we need to put out a statement for this social thing that happened here, and we need to say this thing. But there's actually no real systemic change that's happening within the organization itself. Like there were no policies that were made, there were no benefits that were created. So it kind of falls on deaf ears from that leadership.
Just a box that's checked.
Exactly.
And then, and I'm sorry. And then because they're not doing the hard work to kind of build it into, then they can later on say, and see, this is why this is not, effective, because we're doing it.
Well, right. Or it's very like vanity, like vain metrics that they'll say, we wanted to increase, diverse hires like this. And they put it out there, but they don't really say exactly what that looks like, break it down for us. And like, how's that representation look like as you scale up the ladder? I think it's really commmen knowledge right now to know that as the higher you go up, the less diverse it gets. And so what programs
the
do
higher you go, the pinker it gets.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Oh, no, and then also it's part of the conversation is about like, well, who's responsible for doing the work?
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of that falls on the folks who are already marginalized and underrepresented and who are struggling kind of like, develop and grow within their own careers. And by that, I mean, one such program that exists within a lot of tech companies right now they will launch employee resource groups. Great. They're awesome. I love them. I've launched them, and whatnot. Employee resource groups are volunteer led groups within a company that center around a certain identity and, that allows them to have community, makes the company feel smaller, a little bit, allows them to bring things to awareness. And that's where you see a lot of these, like, there's an event, lunch and learn. There's this workshop that this group wants to do. There's this, did I ever say Heritage Month situation? So those programs are happening and those are fun and not discrediting them. You can learn a lot about it, but if there's no change and action oriented call to action from there that the leadership is willing to take on and be responsible and accountable to, then that's volunteer work, and they do that on top of their day jobs. And so, in my experience as a DI professional, working with these my colleagues, at the company, they're burnt out. We see high rates of attrition. We see the lack of development that's there. And then if it's impacting their day to day and they get let go, then what was that all for? Right. So a lot of the work that I try to do is really change the narrative and change the relationship with the organization. And so really activating executives to support the group. So having them be an executive sponsor to the group, making sure that they have a voice at the table. So they're championing the group's work, their mission, during leadership meetings with the board. So making sure that they're funneling resources to them. They're having budget for stuff, that they're being recognized for the impact that they're having, making sure that there's we're connecting the dots a little bit better. So like with recruiting teams, a lot of the work will center around connecting recruiters with the ERG group so we can tap into those communities. But you also don't want to just like cherry pick and like, that's also very like, you're just like tokenizing of that group itself. And so I approach it with 3 pillars with community work. So it's one, we do want to support the ERG group to help us find talent now.
What's ERG?
Employee resource group.
Okay.
And so for talent now, because we have roles to fill. If we want to increase diversity, your ERGs are a great internal resource that doesn't cost you any money to really tap into necessarily on that front. But you want to do it authentically. So to do it authentically, then how else can we give back to the community? And one way is how can we prepare for talent for the future? And so what are some of the younger STEM programs that exist out there for a particular demographic group that the company can support? In whatever ways that works for them or that the group wants to do, and letting the ERGs have a say in that, giving them agency to kind of own some of that and that influence those decisions is great. And then also like how are we supporting the communities that we want to employ, that we want to support and do business with. So this allows us, to tap into new markets for a company, allows them to really do it. So there's a lot of benefits for companies to really show up for the ERGs. And then also, how are we incentivizing those folks to take on leadership roles within that ERG? That's a huge one for them because they, either it's paying them a stipend, giving them some extra money. I mean, who doesn't want more of that? But also they want to know that they're going to be able to grow within that organization. Yeah. So, developing professional development programs.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you said it earlier. I mean, putting people in higher ups in place, I feel like that's the biggest incentivizing, like making sure that I am not hung out to dry because I stepped up.
Yeah, no, for sure. So like with the executive sponsors, one way that I have been able to have impact within organizations this way is, if folks want to step into leadership roles in that employee resource group, they will have access to, have one-on-one time with that executive, being able to have them as a mentor, giving them, letting them like shadow them in their meetings, also having those executive sponsors do workshops for the groups and, for the company on what skills and leadership skills that they want to pass down. And this is a great conversation to have with leadership teams that ERGs and, your employees can have a voice in as well, because they want to know what behaviors And this is kind of where that inclusion starts to show up. What behaviors and what actions that we want the company to, the skills, competencies, what have you, that we want to have to underpin the culture of the organization. And then now I can help and create content for that and develop those workshops and have the leaders lead those workshops. So now, it's a return on investment here. Like this is very cyclical type of programming and skill development and professional development. And so these are ways that, I think are important to talk about because, again, going from face value, self-serving, programmatic things to more systemic and intentional and authentic allyship and, just showing it for your employees, this is what's going to help keep your employees. This is what's going to help develop brand loyalty. This is what's going to attract talent to your company as well.
Yeah, you brought up something really interesting that I want to go back to, which is, or maybe you didn't bring this up, but you were talking about, maybe I'm bringing it up.
I'm going to bring it up.
Maybe I'm bringing it up and maybe I think it's interesting.
Speak on it.
Is retention.
Yeah.
Right. Did you bring that up?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter yet.
Yeah, I did. I said it.
Roll the tape.
Roll the
tape. So retention, right? Because I noticed this actually when we were both in undergrad, that the school was always about like, we're bringing in a bunch of like POC kids, but then the POC kids would come onto campus and then they would get overwhelmed because either it was like financially not sustainable, because the environment was hostile, right? And so they couldn't retain those students. Or you also had, and I've also seen this in work environments. I used to consult for a company in Oakland, and they had the long and the short of it is like every Black employee that they hired had quit by the end of the year. Right. And it was because it was a hostile environment.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I really hear, I just wanted to put a highlight around this idea that like, there are companies who do this thing where they're like drawing people in, but they're not doing anything to make them feel safe and keep them.
Exactly. And that's part of the conversation that I have with business leaders is, diversity, it exists, right? Like you can't deny that, right? And we can hire and go out and source, talent of XYZ group. But if we do not have the infrastructure, the support systems and mechanisms and processes and what have you in place when they get here, it's going to be a revolving door. Yeah. And are we willing to risk the cost, the time it takes to go out and backfill roles, and not back roles, backfill roles. Just in case I saw your eyes raised there. Back roles. To backfill roles and whatnot.
We're bankrolling back roles.
But exactly, are we willing to risk that? And, that's company money and what have you. And, or do we want to remove these barriers and identify these things and create those things so they exist so that when they come here, they can succeed and thrive. That's going to help you get, referrals. That's going to help you. Again, all those things go back, brand loyalty, retention rates, all that, right? And so those are things you want to, those things recruiters can use, just like sell the company. We've done this, we do this, what have you, and get press releases or whatever the company wants to do, but do it and mean it. Right.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I'm like here with two Anthonys.
Well, I think it goes
really
back
sweet.
to this idea that like, if I don't see somebody like me doing what I want to do, I'm not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think,
no one's encouraging it, if no one's like, saying like, hey, we value this thing, or just like the opportunities isn't there. And also, you don't know what you don't know. But also at the same time, from the way I am, Anthony can probably attest to this. It's like I'm a closed mouth, don't get fed kind of person. Yeah, exactly. So like I will go there and like it's got me some heated arguments with business leaders as well. But it's because I'm passionate about it. But I've had to learn, I've had to learn how to play the game essentially.
We all have,
we all have. You kind of have to, right, in this world. But I do it with intentionality. I do it to let hey, I'm not going to tell you you're racist by telling you you're racist, but I'm going to show you that these things here mean that we got to change some stuff around going. So.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of sorry. No,
I just said I like that because it's like you could have played the game, but intentionally. How can I still do what I need to do, but also make sure that I
Exactly.
What I'm reminded of here is as a way of kind of like
take a breath.
Yeah, I know. It's been a day. So I think the Caper Foundation Caper Foundation, Caper Center, Caper Capital. It's by his name is Mitch Caper and his wife Frida Caper
his name
Klein.
is Caper? That's amazing.
No, that's the last name. Yeah, Caper Klein. And then Frida Caper Klein. So I bring them up, and I bring up
Her name is Frida Caper Klein.
Yeah,
That's a
Frida
cool
Caper
name.
Klein. I think it's Frida Caper Klein. They're both amazing people. I bring them up because they were the original creators behind what's called the SMASH program, and so it's a program that prepares young students of color to enter the STEM fields, like science, technology, etc. Right?
Awesome.
The other thing is that the Caper Foundation or Caper Capital it engages in what's called like conscious capitalism, right? Which is like taking money and funding like, black and brown, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think, and they've been very successful, right? I think they are very, I'd encourage people to check them out. They're doing wonderful work. Their headquarters is in Oakland. Then how are we on time, Jordan?
We're good.
Oh, we're good on time. Okay. I wanted to go back a little bit.
I know. It's like, isn't Jordan producing?
Yeah. Well, I just don't know because come on, guys. I'm tired. I know. Oh.
Let's go. Anyways.
I quit. So
David, you want a job?
It doesn't pay. So you'll be right back where you started.
It's a resume builder.
Yeah, it is. The other thing I wanted to say is I've also so I just went through like a pre-doctoral application process just earlier this year. And I was looking for like the organizations that like they say like we encourage students from diverse backgrounds, blah, 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 blah. Do you know not a single one of them offered me an interview?
Oh,
really?
I was like, yeah, I was like,
so it's lip service, huh?
well, okay, here's the thing.
Or you're not diverse. You're not diverse enough.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm like, either I'm not one of the smart brown people, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so it does. So I bring that up to say that it really messed with my head because I was like, did you just try to like seduce students of color? To not like offer us spots. But then I'm like, okay, Anthony, is it really fair to say that like they're not like practicing what they preach just because they didn't offer you a spot?
If you had time, and you did the research, maybe you should do the research and just casually go in.
Oh, I have. Well, no, to keep it real, I have gone back, like to some of those. Well, part of it is like, I think some of these situations were really shady because there was one program on the East Coast where they had one spot.
Oh, okay.
I'm like,
so competitiveness is like...
Well, the first thought was like, y'all have that earmarked for someone,
Yeah, no.
internal, whatever.
But whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. You mean to tell me that anyway? So the point is that I think there's something in there that feels, I don't know what it is. What were we going to say, Jordan?
It sounds discouraging, right? And I think it goes to this point of like, even if you build it right and people come, right? If you're the one that doesn't get picked when the building's built, metaphorically, then who is it serving, right?
Well, right. It sounds just like our disclaimer because we say that so we won't get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, but before you say anything, David, because I'll forget it.
Okay.
I know I already did. I just forgot it. Oh, well, no. So what I was saying is, fuck, David, you go.
Yeah.
I was gonna say one other thing too that so what could be going behind the scenes. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? You don't know exactly like who is reading that letter, who's making that final decision, what their knowledge is of these DEI related concepts. So we're talking like unconscious bias potentially here showing up.
And one of the situations, I'm so bitter. In one of the situations, two of the situations. Three of the situations, the people who made the final decisions or the director of these programs were all women of color.
Oh.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I think I'm bringing this up to say that like, that fucked me up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like that fucked me up because I'm like, wait a minute. Because then, one of the things I think it encourages is like a crabs in the barrel mentality because it's like, then you're essentially like, at least it's been my experience. It's like, oh, what is the difference between like the students of color who get offered these opportunities versus the ones that don't get offered these opportunities?
Well,
right.
Yeah. I mean, without knowing like their criteria, you know, and whatnot, and like what else are they looking for? What's that secret sauce? What's that extra? Is it how community how involved they were in the community? What are their services? They, whatever it may be.
Is it possible that it's working exactly the way it's supposed to?
Well, I think so too, right? Because the people who did offer me interviews were institutions that are known for doing this type of work, right? So they're very popular institutions, and they're also known for like doing all the things that you said, which is like creating environments and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I even had one because I had to withdraw one of my applications, and this is actually coming to mind. I had to withdraw one of my applications from a place in SoCal, and they contacted me back and they said, they were not disappointed, but, saddened. And then they encouraged me to apply for a postdoc there. So I was like, okay.
The position that you applied for on the East Coast, I wrote them a letter and called and said, no, because I'm not interested in finding a replacement for him.
In the end, I agree with you, Louis. I think it all worked out exactly the way it was supposed to work out.
But it's like, there's nothing wrong. It's understandable. It's like, you were supposed to love me. Supposed to love me.
The other thing, and another thing, the other thing it brings up for me is like, so like I've worked very hard, right? And I've done all this stuff, and like statistically, I represent less than 1% of the population when it comes to like these fields that I'm entering in, right? And so there is something, it is discouraging, right? It is discouraging, and so I feel like maybe, why am I bringing this up? I guess to say it's like,
I think it's just
petty LaBelle.
Well, are you aware of like those who got that position? I know
one girl. Let me tell you, she wasn't a person of color.
For me, just kind of what's kind of coming up for me right now is looking at like, what's that process like? I got to look at, is the criteria actually like, is it structured? Is it objective criteria? Is there room for bias to show up in there? Who is looking at, and what is their skill level in this area of like identifying like, hey, we want them to address touch on all these points here, but if they have this other type of lived experience, we want to include that here, whatever it may be, because that's a subjective situation. And then we'll also where out of all the applicants, how many are coming in are of person of color or what have you, then versus how many enter the process, then how many, as they move up, like where does diversity start to fall off? And then by the time you get to that decision point, who's there? Because then that's where you can look at, something more systemic to see what's happening internally and then work to address that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, you're doing great. But so what I was thinking of is the way that, because what you're describing to me is the way that systemic oppression works, right? So you can, for example, it's kind of like the exception rule, right? So it's like we are grooming this person to enter into this program, right? And maybe that is a person of color, right? But maybe that is a person of color, right? But there's a way in which systemic oppression is still working there, right? Because it's the person in power that's saying, I am dubbing you, like I am touching you, and you get to come in, but no one else gets to come in.
The competition is real, especially in that space, and like also too, like where are they pulling these folks from?
And the thing on the other side too, right, is that you applied to how many places?
I think 15.
Okay, and you got
6. No, okay. I know. I'm not complaining. I'm not. I'm not complaining. Listen, I'm not complaining.
I know, but to say that is right. I think we are so quick to point out the negatives or the faults. I didn't get this. I didn't get that. But yes, you fought hard. Yes, we're going against all these different odds as who we are.
Yeah.
And you still succeeded in some spots, right? Maybe you didn't succeed across. You didn't get 10s across the board, right? But you got something.
Yeah, you know what's so funny is that sometimes I feel like the podcast turns into therapy for Anthony.
Well, no, it's super interesting because like while we're all for this DEI and whatever, it's like it is important to have a complete conversation about like, you know, okay, so kind of what you're struggling through because there's nothing wrong with competition, especially if there really is competition.
Here's the thing though, is that like,
especially if there really is competition, but if folks are being, folks don't even have an opportunity, then that's the challenge.
I mean, and in the end, like the people that I did get interview offers from were just as competitive as the institutions that didn't offer them to me. I do think, what is going on back here? I do think
we're going to land the plane.
I'm doing it different. I'm doing it different. You're going to say, hey, get over there and produce. I just did some signals. Okay?
Lewis was looking at Jordan like, hey, cut him off. So
go ahead. You want to say?
Well, let me just wrap up my thought. I am hyper aware of the fact that like I ended up in a fantastic place. Amazing place, just as competitive as the other ones. And the process itself was really grueling, you know? And anyway, that's all. I
just want to say before we go into our podcast exclusive, this is our last episode for the season.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
I get to round it out.
Yes, you do. And it was wonderful. It's like this month has been amazing. And if you've listened so far, like, you know, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting us. But I also want to let you know that the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Wait.
There's more, Jordan.
I got it.
And our vision, Jordan, is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and tune in every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are we recording?
We're good.
That's so funny. You're fine. It's fine. It's fine.
We'll explain.
We didn't even tell you.
Yeah, we'll explain.
I know.
I was not set up for success.
I know. Systemically oppressive. So how was that for you, David?
Oh, that was great. Yeah. I mean, it's comfortable. I feel like,
and I feel like we didn't even. I feel like they made like I was looking kind of at. We're kind of peeking at your notes.
Yeah.
Like we could do this again and still not touch on a lot of things.
Told you
so much.
Told you.
Most definitely. Yes. There's all different ways you can go with that.
There's so many ways.
I think that, like I was telling you before, I think what's really important is that we have the conversation. I think because some people just don't even take this into consideration. You know, we kind of go blindly into thinking that. Well, I mean, I don't know how many, but there was a time where I was just like, oh yeah, all I have to do is apply and I can get the job, or all I have to do is this and whatever, and without knowing or understanding that there is bias and there are other barriers that are in the way. And really, this conversation is not really just. It's like you said, it's not really for us. It's for the people who really need to hear it. Like sometimes our palm-colored friends who.
I like that. Okay.
I got that from TikTok. And if I'd said palm, you have to find different ways to say things because you'll get a community violation because they'll take you down. It's like, how dare you? How dare you, black man?
And we can also talk about DEI and a generational, I think, point of view too, right? Like when I was growing up, my mom is a Salvadorian, and when we were growing up, she said, when affirmative action was a thing, put your Salvadorian on every college application. Put that you're Hispanic, even though you don't look, but put it on paper. On paper, you look better. And that was the expectation. Like, oh, well, I'll get chosen just because I'm Latin, half of me, right? But when you look at me,
right. And similar experience for myself. You know, my family, family of immigrants too, and like older generations, they stopped teaching us like Spanish though growing up though, right? They wanted us to like more assimilate into American culture and whatnot. And then for us, they put white on everything. And it wasn't until as I grew up, as I grew, and like if you want to get in place, actually go this direction, and now put your Latinx, your Mexican, whatever it may be, and in my applications to transfer out from from community college to Berkeley, actually they told me to switch my major. Like I was, going a psychology major, and then they told me to switch to ethnic studies, this more like exotic, quote unquote, and come in there. And then like I got in, and then it's within switch back, So it's like, again, it's like learn to play the game, and I do that in professional sense too. I had to learn the language, what have you, and so have impact.
You know what's interesting? Okay, so outside of like if the business world or whatever, outside of before you get in, what are some of the things that we can do outside to kind of like, because you were talking about what did you refer to the group like the
employee resource groups?
Yeah, the employee. Is there something outside of that can kind of, because like after this conversation, I feel like I want to go get a book and I want to read, and because I don't feel as, I know some things, but I'm not nearly as versed, and I want to be versed.
Verse.
I think a big part of it is just
you like that, huh? It's like I'm all versed.
What can folks do within their communities?
Yeah,
and what
exactly.
have you? Definitely, it's like figure out ways to how you can give back. So one thing that I do when I talked about like the 3 community pillars that I kind of operate with, one is how we're going to go back and support the communities that we do business with and want to hire and what have you. One way that I would do it is like I get our employee resource groups, our business leaders to go out and we do like workshops with the community. So we did work with Goodwill before where we went out and we started doing resume workshops and letting them know, hey, this is how you can tailor your experience for these type of roles. But the roles were for our roles. So here we are now being able to and have like these mock interviews, giving them practice for that. So we're allowing them to have access to some of our technology things so we can help them build whatever, build out the resume, make their LinkedIns and what have you. So really help develop them to make them more presentable and more competitive for their own work and their own whatever they want to do. So things like that's one way. Definitely educate yourself on things, just go and just see what materials are out there, what have you. And what else can the folks do? Volunteer, really. I don't know.
Volunteer, yeah, exactly.
Volunteer is a big one. Definitely volunteer, get out there and understand, because you want to understand the people you want to impact, right? You need to know through their eyes, through their experience, what it is they need. And that's the best that's going to help you inform decisions and actions that you take.
Okay.
For sure.
What you doing over there, Anthony?
I'm so tired. I was just looking at Reddit. I'm just really tired. This has been, I'm also feeling a little self-conscious about the stuff I brought up a little bit, like the last stuff, because I'm like,
I love it. I know.
I'm just.
I look over and I'm like, Anthony, are you going to cry now?
No, I'm just having a process. I think part of it is today I had an intake where a racial thing came up into the intake, which was very tense and like clinically significant. And then, like right now I'm in the process of applying to postdocs and I'm coming across a lot of this language, and stuff. So, a lot of it just feels so fresh, so fresh.
I mean, a lot of this work you have to process it, right? You have to feel it. You have to understand. And that's where a lot of tension can arise within a corporate space when you're talking with like cis white men, in positions of power, right? Trying to tell them that things need to change. You're talking about things like oppression, white privilege. The guards are going to go up, but it's really framing those conversations that it's not about you. It's about these things that exist that help prevent it and make things harder for those who are not like you to succeed and what have you. And so, but bottom line there, to your point though, is just really feel it, process it. Definitely, I think
the hard part is not to take it personal.
But that's what I was going to ask you. What does self-care look like to you with regards to the work that you do?
Come on, Louis.
That's such a great.
Louis said, "What does self-care look like to you?"
No, for sure. That is a wonderful question. One for me personally, for me, it's taking a break from any of it, like not having this conversation around it, not really engaging, because it's something I live, it's something I breathe, it's something I do in work. So it's like in the day-to-day. I can't escape it if I wanted to, but to like really when I get home from work, when I had work, some of it is like let me take 10, let me take 20 or 30 minutes, whatever you need for that. Being outside, writing poetry. Would write spoken word poetry and do that. Oh yeah, give me the snaps. Oh yes. Oh sorry.
You're fine. Yeah, there was just a lot of extra noise.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
And
That was in your head.
blah,
blah, blah, blah, blah, blah.
yeah, no, that's kind of where I
Okay,
tune in.
right on.
Totally. I agree. You need a separation of church and state with whatever you're doing.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And if there's a third church and state, right, there has to be separation because as soon as they all bleed together, that's when you get tired.
Yeah.
Right. That's when you get
Yeah.
exhausted when you don't have that ability to separate.
Yeah, even on my drive here, David, were you gonna say something?
Oh no, that's just, always just check what I call my emotional well. Like if I don't have
Emotional well.
if I don't have if it's not full, doesn't have enough to sustain the work, and you know those who I bring with me, or those who I'm there for, you know, and trying to carry along or what have you, then I can't show up for myself, you know.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so I need to make sure I have that going. What can I do to refill that a little bit?
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Like your chalice runneth over.
Yeah, exactly. Or sees dry, like, you know, tap it out. Like. Exactly.
Wait, self-care. So on my way here, I was like employing a lot of the things that like I tell patients to do. Like I was on my drive, I was like deep breathing and extending the exhale. I was creating a gratitude list in my head.
Dope.
And then I was looking for like music. And the thing is, I don't, if I'm miserable, I don't generally listen to music. And I came across this one song that I forgot that I had liked on Spotify. It's called All My Life by Tiesto and Fastboy. And when the just by the way.
By the way.
Yeah. And when the bass dropped, I felt like my soul was cleansed. And I was like,
Nice.
and I was like,
I love
oh my
that.
God,
Yeah.
I forgot. You know, you forget the power of music.
Yeah, yeah. You needed that like catharsis, you know, a release of something. And yeah, dancing is definitely when you're like, I've turned on music, it was Kai, my neck, my back, and like life got better.
Oh my God. Okay. You know what that reminded me of? When we lived together, when you would shower, you would play Christina's I'm a survivor. Is that
that's Destiny's Child?
No. Wait, no. What's the Christina
I play, like,
Aguilera?
Dirty. I would play,
No.
like, I don't know.
I'm a fighter, baby.
Yeah, it was something where
Thanks
she's
for making me
harder.
strong.
Yeah.
That song's
Or is it
stronger.
called Fighter? I'm not sure.
No, it's
Makes me
yeah.
that much stronger.
But that's what that reminded me of. Yeah. You would listen to you would
for sure. So like,
you would play while you showered.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very lyric focused person with my songs. You know,
absolutely.
Music can be very intentional. You know, my songs. See, anything that if I want to cry, you know, I'll play certain things going on there. You know, so sing. I love to keep singing in my car by myself in the shower. What have you.
100%.
Oh, cute. Did you say 100%?
100%. No, yeah. I karaoke everything. And like, if I don't, then like, it's just not, I have to.
Okay. Do you ever put on concerts by yourself in your room?
Oh, yes.
All the
Ideally
time.
naked, but yes.
Yeah.
Oh, really? That would be so distracting for myself.
Really?
I don't know. I'm just saying things at this point.
My dick's normally my mic.
You either have no ribs or
No. I'm kidding. I just had to throw that in there.
how do you sing?
Very loudly. You hear him talk?
No, because it's like when you're doing whatever, I think it's not even about that, because it's like, obviously it's not really my, but it's one of those things where I just don't care. I have no concerns around me. I can be as silly as I want. I don't have to feel shame or embarrassment for being
I
a total
love
goofball.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
You know what I do when I do it? I cover all my windows. Yeah, I do.
Oh
I
God.
do. I think we're landing the plane. Yeah, it's
We are
8:59.
landing the plane, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, David.
No, thank you all for having me.
Yeah.
You know, just a quick statement out there for sure. I mean, if you're listening in and you are an employer, or you're an employee of a company that has DI roles available and or employee experience roles, and you want to connect with me, definitely write in. I don't know how they will do that, but I'll leave my LinkedIn around for sure.
Yeah, you can contact
let me see how I can be that value add to help your organization achieve its DI goals.
I love that.
Instagram
David.
handle.
Do it.
Yeah, do you have an Instagram handle? But not for
work
this.
appropriate necessarily.
Well, on that note,
I have a brand to protect.
Yeah. As usual, if you are listening to us for the first time, thank you for visiting us. Come back next week. And if you're a longtime listener, as always, we love you and we'll see you soon.
Anthony loves you. No, I love you too.
Yeah, we love you. Bye.